Hello and welcome back to the the fourth? I can't remember what number we're on, but yet another Okami classical Japanese analysis video. Today we are going to be going over the things that the Hasu no Hanagami says to you, which is the guy who, he gives you the special ability where if you draw a circle on the water, it makes a little lily pad pop up that you can then jump on, and you can use that to cross very long stretches of water. And I'm just going to skip a lot of the preamble other than just to remind you guys, please like the video, please subscribe, please share with all of your weeb friends and everybody who plays Okami and whatnot. And let's just get right into it. I am going to say, however, if you have seen the previous videos and you already know what classical Japanese is and why it's cool, please go ahead and skip ahead to the little next section where we actually do the breakdown. But for those of you who are first-time viewers, what I am doing here is I am going through games and eventually anime, and I am finding instances of what's known as classical Japanese. Classical Japanese is different from modern Japanese in that it's an older form of it. It was the Japanese that was spoken by the aristocratic, the nobles of the Heian period who lived in the capital city of Heian-kyo, which is today modern Kyoto. And these people, the aristocrats of Heian-kyo, back 1,000 years ago, laid pretty much the foundations for all of modern Japanese traditional culture. They were the ones who wrote the most famous poetry. They were the ones who wrote all of the famous literary works like The Tale of Genji or The Tale of the Heike. They were the ones who made Japanese music, traditional Japanese music, the way that it currently is. These were the people who oversaw the first golden age of Japan. And because of that, their language was spread all over the country because a long time ago, even still today, but definitely more so a long time ago, there were many different dialects. And it was hard for people to actually understand each other if they spoke in their regular dialect. So a lot of times what would happen is they would adopt this classical Japanese, this way of the Heian aristocracy, the way they spoke. They would adopt that all over the country and use that as a lingua franca, as a way for all of them to communicate with each other effectively. And because of all of this, classical Japanese has this air of majesty, this air of like almost godlike power, because it's something that the ancients, the people who laid the foundations for our society, spoke. It's the language that they spoke. And so when you have games and or anime, a lot of times if you want to convey this idea of like ancient power and wisdom, you have your characters speak in classical Japanese. And they do this in Okami. If you play the Japanese version of the game, when you go and you get new celestial brush techniques and you summon the different brushstroke gods down from the sky by filling in the constellations, they then bestow you with their special powers, but they do so while speaking classical Japanese. And because ever since I was young, I was really into Japanese culture, and because I wanted to understand better the origins of Japanese culture, I have undertaken for several years now to learn and understand classical Japanese so I can read all of these foundational works, these foundational literary works, the poetry and all of that good stuff, so I can understand it better. And I figured that I might as well share what I find with all of you guys and share my love for traditional Japanese culture and video games and anime and whatnot. And we can all just have a good time together geeking out over Japanese stuff. Anyway, with all of that being said, let's get into the actual linguistic breakdown of this next little brushstroke technique thing, okay? Here we go. I guess I'm just going to have you guys watch this little bit here. Again, one of the great things about Okami is they are clearly just having fun. The developers were just like, we want to make something a lot of fun. Okay. First thing I want to point out is, like I said in the previous Hanagami video, the Saki no Hanagami, he's playing a sho, which is a mouth pipe. Mouth organ, I think is what it's called. It's that little thing that he's holding right there and they're sticking straight up. But this, the Hasu no Hanagami, which is this guy's name, the Hasu no Hanagami is playing a fue, a flute. Probably a ryuteki is my guess, which was, I think, the most common kind of flute that they played back then. But the flute was actually one of the more important instruments. Like, I believe there's almost a masculine connotation to it, and I can only speculate as to the reasons why. I'm assuming it's something to do with the fact that between the sexes back in the day, way back in ancient Japan, especially in the aristocracy, men tended to move around a lot. Like, they got up and they went to different places. They went to court. They went to their main home. They went to their other side chicks' homes, and they were just kind of all over the place. They went to their friends' homes, but women who were not supposed to be seen outside by any unrelated males, women stayed in one area almost all the time. And so it made more sense, I'm assuming, at least again, this is what I'm assuming, is that it made sense for men to carry flutes with them, because flutes you kind of take them anywhere, you know? You can just pick them up, take them around with you, as opposed to things like a koto, right? A koto is like the big, long, it's almost like a huge guitar that you lay down on the ground and you pluck, and kotos are beautiful instruments, don't get me wrong. Kotos are wonderful. But I think because of that, and I mean, a true aristocrat would be skilled in pretty much all of the instruments, but women tended to play the koto a lot more because you can't transport that around as easy. It's much easier to just set it on the ground and just play it there. But a flute you can pick up and you can take anywhere and go wherever you want with it. So this Hasu no Hanagami is playing a flute, and again, you can see from the headdresses actually, these gods here are actually very male-coded. That's a male headdress that he's wearing. That's an eboshi. And so it makes sense that they're playing male-type instruments. Again, I might actually be way off with that, but from my understanding, from reading Tale of Genji, from reading Sei Shonagon's The Pillow Book and some of those other things, it does seem to me like flutes tend to be a more masculine instrument, while kotos tend to be a little more feminine. But anyway, just a little interesting cultural note before we actually begin. So this brushstroke, this celestial brush technique god's name, his name is Hasu no Hanagami. Hasu means a lotus. So a lily pad, right? A lotus pad. And then no just means of, and then Hanagami is a combination of hana, which means flower, and kami means god. So the flower god of the lily, flower god of the lotus, okay? And again, we'll just get this out of the way. In Japanese, we have the particle no, okay? No means of. And again, if you've seen the previous videos, you understand this, so you don't have to pay too much attention. But the no means of. However, what we do in English is when we say the of, we have a certain order with it. So for example, one of my favorite games is called Shadow of the Colossus, okay? Shadow of the Colossus. In Japanese, what you would say is Kyojin no Kage, Colossus of Shadow. The Colossus of Shadow is how you would say it in Japanese. So basically what you do is the of basically works the same, but in Japanese, if you want to translate it between Japanese and English, you have to flip it around to the other side. So Hasu no Hanagami literally means the flower god of the lotus. Flower god of lotus. The lotus flower god. Okay, now with that out of the way, let's get down in here. Again, we've seen this if you've seen the previous videos. Oh, these two characters right here just mean oh, it's just a sound. And it means something kind of like, ah, I see. Well now, here you are. So oh, and then we have warera ga jibo, okay? First word, ware, means I. And then we add this da on there, and that makes it plural. So I plural, multiple me's, multiple I's is we, okay? However, then we add a particle on here, the ga, which is a possessive particle. It denotes possession. It denotes ownership, I guess you could say, a relationship it's an ownership. So ware means I, warera means us or we, and then warera ga means our. So warera ga jibo. Jibo is a Chinese loanword. It's from the kanji ji here, which means compassionate, loving, selfless. You know, it's this kind of virtuous love type of a thing, this compassionate thing. So compassionate, ji, and then bo means mother, okay? So jibo means compassionate mother, august mother, wondrous mother, loving mother, that type of a thing. So, o warera ga jibo. Oh, our gracious, our compassionate, kind mother, Amaterasu o mikami. Amaterasu here is written in katakana, if you guys know what katakana is. It's a writing system that is easier to pronounce than, say, the kanji, the actual Chinese characters here. But Amaterasu is the name of the main character, Amaterasu. This is a wolf right here. Now, Amaterasu actually is a combination of two Japanese words. The first one, ama, means heaven, means the heavens, the skies. And then terasu means to shine something, to brighten something up. So Amaterasu literally means heaven shining. And Amaterasu, for those of you who don't know, is in the Japanese pantheon the sun goddess. She's considered the head of the pantheon. It is from her lineage, it is from her descendants, her children, supposedly, that the emperors of Japan, that the rulers of the clan of Yamato, which the modern Japanese emperor can basically trace his line completely all the way back unbroken to the age of the gods, Amaterasu is the progenitor, supposedly, of the Japanese imperial house. And so because of that, she is the head god of the pantheon. Her name literally means heaven shining, which the thing that shines in the heavens, the thing that lightens the heavens up, is the sun. She is the sun goddess. And then we follow Amaterasu, the name, with O Mikami, okay? Now this is interesting because there's a mi in here, which normally shouldn't be there if we were just working with these two kanji here. Because this first kanji means O, it's great, big, awesome. Well, great. And then kami means God. Like I said, Hasu no Hanagami. And then we have O Mikami, O Kami, okay? Now O means great, Kami means God. So what's this mi? This extra mi here in the middle. Mi is an honorific thing. You see it in the Kojiki a lot. You see it in really, really old school Japanese names in particular, but a lot of old school Japanese things. It denotes this sense of spiritual power, of godlike power. So Amaterasu o Mikami basically just means great honorific God. Now, one thing that we have to mention, because again, this is all for the new viewers, the combination of these two kanji here, O and Kami, Okami, means great God. However, there is another word in Japanese that is pronounced the exact same way, called Okami, and that means a wolf, which funnily enough is the form that Amaterasu takes in this video game. Now, in the original mythologies, there is no connections between Amaterasu and wolves, okay? That's not a thing. However, the makers of Okami noticed that there's a little bit of a play on words here, and they decided to have some fun with it. So they turned Amaterasu into an Okami, because she is an Okami. She's a great god, but just to have some fun, they turned her into a wolf. Wonderful. Oh, that's fun. So basically this first panel here means, oh, our compassionate mother, heaven shining, great god. The great god, heaven shining. Okay? Moving on. Okay. So, beginning here. Ware. This means I. And then an interesting bit here. In modern Japanese, it's very unusual to go without the necessary particles. For those of you who don't know what a particle is, you'll see because there's still a lot of them. But particles basically denote what a word in a sentence does, what its function, what its use in a sentence is. And a lot of times in modern Japanese, when you say a sentence, if you have the subject of the sentence, you have the thing that is doing the actual main action of the sentence, you are supposed to mark it with a specific particle. However, in classical Japanese, you didn't always need to do that. In fact, it was almost more common that you didn't. Particles serve to denote specific things, unusual things about parts in a sentence, okay? And so, when you're just starting a sentence and you're just stating the subject of a sentence, a lot of times you didn't need to do that because it's just, well, duh, this is the subject of a sentence. So in this case, that's what's happening here. Ware. In modern Japanese, you would have to put something like a wa or a ga after it. But here it's just ware. Okay. Ware, I, is the subject of a sentence. This is the thing. I am the thing that is going to be doing the action of the following part of the sentence. And what is that action? Well, we'll get there. It's actually a little bit further ahead. So ware, I, shinboku is a Chinese loanword. Comes from the kanji for kami, which we've seen, divine, God, divine, and boku, which means tree. So divine, tree, and then we have this particle, ni, okay? Ni is the prepositional particle. That's a big fancy word that basically just means that this denotes place, time, position, direction, okay? It basically covers all of our prepositional particles. Are they particles for us? All of our prepositions, so like in, at, on, by, to, those kinds of things. Basically, ni just covers all of those. So ware, shinboku ni. So in this case, I think ni is best translated as in. So I, in the divine tree, in the sacred tree, mi o yose. Mi means body. It's a native Japanese word that means body. However, in this instance, it's better to translate it more as I myself, my person, my being. And then mi is followed by the particle o, which denotes the object of a sentence. The object of a sentence is the thing that has the action done to it. So in English, we say, I drink Dr. Pepper, because I just had a Dr. Pepper. I love Dr. Pepper. I drink Dr. Pepper. In this sentence, I is the subject, drink is the verb, is the action, and Dr. Pepper is the object, okay? Thing that is having the action done to it, okay? in Japanese, we denote the Dr. Pepper. I would say watashi, or actually, let's do classical Japanese, okay? I would say ware, Dr. Pepper, because it didn't have Dr. Pepper in classical Japanese. Ware, imiji kimono, I don't ware, Dr. Pepper, o, okay, o, nomu. I drink Dr. Pepper. I drank ware, Dr. Pepper nomiki. Dr. Pepper nominu. Okay, I won't get into the meanings of those. But the important thing is this o, okay? Dr. Pepper is the thing that's having the action done to it. So me, o. So I myself, my person, o, something is being done to the person, okay? Yose. Now, this comes from the root verb yosu, okay? Which means to bring close to bring into, to bring next to close the distance. However, we go from mio yosu to mio yose, which turns it into this like connective form. And basically it's a soft connection that allows things to not be so distinctly compartmentalized. It's like this thing happened, but then this thing also happened roughly at the same time. Not necessarily super concerned about the exact order of the things that happened, but it's just saying that like I'm continuing this sentence here, but I'm not putting a huge focus on the distinct differences between these parts of the sentence, okay? So, mio yose. So, ware shinboku ni mio yose. I brought my person to the sacred tree and maga maga shiki, okay? The root verb here is maga. Maga. Maga is a ancient Japanese word that means like terrible or catastrophic, horrendous. Like, again, catastrophe, I think, is the best way to describe it. Maga is just like a terrible, horrible thing, this big explosion. Like a civilization crumbling is a maga. It's a horrid thing. It's a bad thing. However, we repeat it, maga maga, okay? And then we add this shiki. Now, in Japanese, ancient Japanese in particular, one of the things that you could do is you could take a noun, theoretically. This didn't happen a lot. It only happened in really defined context. It only happened in very specific instances. But you could take something like maga maga, or you could take something like a noun, okay? And you can add a shi on the end of it. And when you add a shi on the end of it, that turns it into an adjective. So in this case, maga, which means horrible, terrible, catastrophic, baleful. That's a good word, baleful. So you can have this baleful thing, and then you have this shi, and that turns it into an adjective. So you have catastrophe, maga, and then you have a maga maga shik, or maga maga is a huge catastrophe, and then you have a maga maga shi, and that makes it catastrophic, okay? Now the thing about that, though, is putting a shi on the end of it. Adjectives that end with shi are technically in the ending form. That's what you do when you have it at the end of a sentence. So if I want to use this same one, what's something that I could do what's something that's catastrophic? So I could say something like spiders, okay? I really don't like spiders. Except they don't bring you... Okay, what I could say is kumo, if I'm speaking in classical Japanese, kumo maga magashi. Spiders are catastrophic. Spiders are dangerous and terrible and horrid, okay? However, that's the ending sentence. If you notice that word comes at the end of the sentence, kumo maga magashi, okay? However, we're putting this ki on the end of it because what that's doing is it's taking it from the ending form, which you put at the end of a sentence, and turning it into an attributive form. This is the form that you use when you use the adjective and then immediately after you use a noun. So you denote that you're describing the noun in this specific way. So basically, if I were to use the same example with spiders, I would say maga magashiki kumo. So the catastrophic, the terrible, the horrid spiders. Maga magashiki kumo zo nakuba yoki, or something like that. It would be good if the terrible spiders were gone, if they just didn't exist, right? Maga magashiki kumo zo mim tomo omowanu, okay? I do not want to see these horrible spiders, okay? So, maga magashiki, these horrible, I'm sorry it's taken so long to get through this, but I want to make sure everybody understands how this is working. Maga magashiki ukiyo, okay? Ukiyo is a combination, this is a native Japanese word. Uki, right here, means floating, which can mean something like transient, insubstantial, light, frivolous, worthless, yeah, I guess worthless, but things that float are not particularly heavy or grave or serious. They're just these fleeting, transient things that are just kind of like, blue, right? And then we have the ukiyo, which is funny because Oh my gosh, and now no, I'm not gonna get into the freaking play on words. Okay, ukiyo. It comes from the uki comes from the root verb uku, which means to float, and then you can turn it into uki, which turns it into a noun. So ukiyo means the floating world. Yo here means world. Okay, so ukiyo means this transient world, this insubstantial world, this pointless, frivolous world. So magamagashiki ukiyo is the horrible, catastrophic, transient world. And then we have kara. Now in modern Japanese, kara just means from or because. Okay, so if I say like ie kara mise ni iku, okay, it means I go from my house to the store. Or I can say something like kuma ga kirai dakara, because I don't like spiders. Mitaku wa nai, I don't want to see them. Okay, I don't want to see them. I don't want to be around them. I don't whatever. Okay. However, in classical Japanese, I still don't fully understand how they use kara. I believe in this instance, they are basically just using it as the from. They're using it as the particle for from. So from the horrible floating world. But just to let you know, in classical Japanese, it does not quite work the same. There's some nuances to it that I still don't fully properly understand because it doesn't occur all of that much. But ukiyo kara, so from this horrible floating world, from this horrible transient world, nogare taru wo, okay? This first part, nogare, comes from the root verb nogaru, which means to escape from, okay? So ukiyo kara, escape, to escape from the horrible world. However, we go from nogaru to nogare, which again is the connective form. However, it's not a strong compartmentalization of it. It means that it allows for verbs to take on other things. It allows us to take a verb and combine it with other things. Namely, in this instance, this taru, which is a jodoshi. It's an auxiliary verb, which means it doesn't have meaning in and of itself. If you just came to somebody and you said taru, right? Or in this case, tari is the ending form, is the original form, tari. People would be like, "What are you? What? What are we talking about? Tari? Are we talking about?" They wouldn't get it. It's kind of like in English, we could say something like want. Okay, if you just came up to somebody and you said want, they'd be like, "Want? You want something? What do you want? What do you want?" Okay, it's kind of that same thing. It's like people understand there is a meaning to it, else it wouldn't be here. But if you just came up to an ancient Japanese person, you're just like tari, they'd be like, okay, tari, what? So we have nogare taru. Okay, comes from taru, and again taru is from the root auxiliary verb tari, which means to do continuously or to do in a state, in a continued state. You know. It's almost a past tense verb, but again, the idea is that you did a thing and then something is persisting in that state. The best way to translate it into regular English, is like an ing. So, nogare taru can mean escaping, okay? However, the interesting thing is, as you notice, we're done with this clause. So why are we not ending it in the ending form, the tari, like I mentioned before? We're not ending it in the tari because we're ending it in the taru, which is the auxiliary form, which if you remember, this magamagashiki here, this is also an attributive form. Did I say auxiliary form? The attributive form is what it is, okay? Meaning that it's supposed to be describing a noun. It's supposed to be describing a thing that follows after it. However, the only thing that comes after it is this particle o, which we saw over here. This denotes an object of a sentence. So wait a minute. There's no object of a sentence here. There's no noun here because an object of a sentence kind of has to be a noun. So what gives? Where's the noun? Why is it just an o here? That doesn't make grammatical sense. Now, the idea here is that in ancient Japanese, in modern Japanese too, but ancient Japanese especially, assumption is king, okay? There's an assumed noun here, probably a koto, which means just a thing, an insubstantial, like an idea thing, okay? So it means the act of escaping, okay? The act of escaping this horrible transient world. Oh, okay? Which means that we're going to be talking about this act of escaping the world. And in fact, actually, this whole thing is one whole clause of a sentence. So I brought myself to this sacred tree to escape from, and escaping from this horrible transient world. Now, moving on. Ikusa to araba, okay? Now, I'm not entirely sure about this clause because, again, you have to keep in mind the whole previous clause. So he's saying that I came to this sacred tree, which is, I believe, where you find him is you use the bloom power to make a tree blossom, and then he jumps out, and then after you make the tree blossom, there's a constellation. You fill in the constellation. He jumps out, and he gives you this special power. So he was hiding in this sacred tree. And so he's like, in regards to me hiding in the sacred tree, talking about me hiding in the sacred tree, ikusa to araba, okay? This first kanji here, ikusa, is ancient Japanese for fight, battle, war, okay? And then we have this particle to, okay? To, the best way I can describe to is as in English. To can also be like a quotation marker. So to can be something like when you read blah, 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 okay? My friend said that, blah, blah, blah. In that instance, to could be translated as that. He thought that, she thought that, he said that, I read that, okay? But in this instance, this to is actually being more used as, okay? Is being used as. There you go. このとは as として okay? Do you see the to, okay? That's what I'm talking about. Being used as. So, ikusa to araba. Now, araba comes from the root verb ari, okay? Which means it's the ancient Japanese, classical Japanese for to be, to exist. There is or there are. So, ikusa to araba. So, ikusa means battle, to means as, and araba, again, ari, it means to be, to exist. However, we go from ari to ara, which makes it in the mizenke, it means the incompleted, the not yet done version, okay? The not yet happened. And then when we do that, we add this conditional, this if, in this instance, this if, ba on the end of it. So araba means if there is, if there are. So ikusa to araba, so if there is as a fight. Basically, if you are going to go fight, I believe is what he's trying to say. If you intend on fighting, if there is going to be a battle, kono means this, okay? Kono here just means this. And this is something that they do a lot more in classical Japanese. They still do it in modern Japanese today, but not quite as much. Kono, again, means this. They refer to themselves in the third person because the third person is a little more beat around the bush. It's a little less direct because I'm not speaking to you, but this humble servant of yours, this lowly being that I call myself. That's a lot more indirect, and it's something that you say when you're speaking to a superior. You don't want to be direct. You're not the one giving commands, okay? You're not the one like, do this. This is how it is. This is how it is. You're just being like, oh, I just happen to be here. Oh, I'm not here to insult you. I'm just here at your disposal, okay? So he says, Kono Hasu no Hanagami. Again, this is his name, Hasu no Hanagami, the flower god of the lotus. So if there is going to be a battle, this flower god of the lotus, okay? And again, normally you would see some kind of a particle here. If this was regular Japanese, if this was modern Japanese, you'd see a particle here. But there is no particle here because assumption is king, okay? You have to assume things in ancient Japanese. You have to assume things in regular Japanese too, just not quite as much. And then we have omoto. Now again, if you've seen the previous videos, you know what omoto means. Omoto is treated in this like an honorific second person, an honorific you. Now, o is just an honorific thing, and I'm not going to go into the origins of o because o, you will never find an o like this in the Kojiki. This was a thing that came out of a lot of Chinese influence. But moto here, moto is a really interesting kanji. Because the kanji that they use here is the same kanji that you can use for yurusu, which means to forgive or to allow, okay? To let somebody do a thing, to allow somebody to do a thing. But moto, normally the way you write it with the kanji for like origin, or like, well, origin, the base, the foundation, the center of the thing, okay? And the reason why this is honorific is because O, again, is just an honorific thing. But moto has two things happening at the same time. One, the people, a superior, like a social superior, they stay in one spot, okay? They don't move around a whole bunch. They have their base, they have their moto, okay? And this is their moto. This is their foundation. They're rooted here, okay? They don't move. And if you need to come to a social superior, it is expected that the social inferior goes to the moto of the superior and asks for whatever boon or whatever request that they have, right? And when that happens, the person of lower social status is allowed, in this case, this yurusu is allowed into the superior's presence, and then you can make your petition or whatever. So all of that idea is bound up in this honorific second person. Because they did technically have a full-on second person, but again, using a second person, especially if you're speaking to a superior, is too direct. It's too rude and straightforward. So you got to beat around the bush with in your presence, your honorific presence. And again, over time, as they began using it that way, it just developed naturally into an honorific second person, even though this game treats it a little more like an actual honorific second person than you would find in a classical Japanese work. But that just makes it easier for modern Japanese people to understand, because trying to understand the concept of referring to people as the nani nani no miya or nani nani no todo or something like that, or nani nani no tono, it's and getting all the nuances is kind of a pain. We're just going to use it like a second person. So omoto, you, and then we have the possessive no, which again just makes it possessive. Okay, so goes from you to your. And then futokoro, okay? Futokoro is the place, if you look at like a kimono, right? A futokoro is the place, I think there's usually a pocket, but you put something in this like breast fold of your kimono, okay? So a futokoro is where you keep stuff, right? You keep it close to you, but it's close to your heart. It's close to the center of your being. And it's close to you because you have outside of your clothes, then you put something in your futokoro and it's much closer to you. So futokoro means like your bosom or your heart. Your bosom. Anyways, so omoto no futokoro, so within your bosom, within your close to your being, okay? And then we have the prepositional ni, again, it means in. So in your bosom, in your heart. Stop saying bosom, especially because Amaterasu is supposed to be a megami, is a goddess. You can also think of futokoro as a pocket, okay? In your pocket, okay? But it's got a little bit more of a, again, it's not how do you say, risque in a sense. It's just like close to your person, it's close to your heart, okay? But it's also a place that you store stuff, because, and that makes sense because he says kai tate matsurite, okay? Oh, kairi tate matsurite, okay? So kairi comes from the root verb kaeru, which means to return home, okay? But again, we go from kaeru, which is the ending form, and we turn it to kaeri, which is the connective form, but it's a soft connective form that allows us to combine one verb into bigger verbs. And then we have kaeri, and then tate matsurite comes from the root verb tate matsuru, which means for an inferior to offer up to a superior. However, we also turn that into, we go from tate matsuru to a tate matsuri, which allows us to connect this particle te, which is a strong connective thing. It's a denoting thing. It's like we do this thing and we are very much highlighting that this thing happens and then sequentially this next thing happens, okay? So kairi tate matsurite. So this tate matsuru, like I said, it means for an inferior to offer up to a superior, but it kind of is just a thing that you put on the end of a verb to make it, instead of just regular, you make it humble. You're saying, oh, I humbly do this thing. I'm not doing this just like normal. I'm doing this acknowledging my place in the social hierarchy and understanding that Amaterasu is the great goddess and I need to pay her all due respect, okay? If there is to be war, if there is to be fighting, I, Hasu no Hanagami, I, the flower god of the lotus, return humbly to your pocket. We'll just say pocket, but there's other words that you could use. To your pocket and... Oh, go back. Go back. God, that was fast. Okay. Kairi tate matsurite. So I return back to your pocket right here. Anyway, and then we have this kamu nagara. Okay. This part here I have a little bit of trouble understanding. But kamu nagara, okay? Kamu is a very, very, very old way of saying kami, okay? Kami means God. Now, if you read the Manyoshu, which is the oldest extant collection of Japanese poems, there's a long poem where they use this word kamu nagara. Now, the kanji for this is kind of hard to translate, and I don't fully understand it. My dictionary said that this means this way, this kind of a thing. And then we have this kanji, which means kami, means God, okay? So this God. Now, breaking down it linguistically, kamu is kami, okay? It means God. And then nagara means like while or as. Again, it's kind of like that toll, but it means like a continuation of a thing. So kamu nagara. So as a God, as a god, or godly, I guess you can say in this instance. Now, again, this is a very old thing. There is a poem in the Manyoshu, to get back to the Manyoshu, where they use this kamu nagara, and they use it in regards to, I believe, the emperor at the time. It says, as your godly person, as your godly being, because thou art a god, because thou art divine, I believe is the intended meaning, or somewhere in that vicinity. Kamu nagara. So, as a god, or in godliness, god, divinity. Banni no hato. Okay. Banni and hato are both Chinese loanwords. Banni means, well, the kanji here, ban or man, means 10,000, but it can mean myriad or innumerable. So many that you can't count them. And then di here is a measurement of distance. It's 1 league is one of the ways that they describe it, but it's a pretty long distance. I don't think it's quite a mile, but it's long. You know, it's not something that, like, it's not something you would measure a room in. You would measure a city in di. So banri, so innumerable miles, innumerable leagues. No, there's that of, so whatever it is, we can translate it directly into English. We just got to remember to flip the order. And hato. Now, hato are both kanji that mean waves, okay? They're just different kanji for waves, because in ancient Chinese especially, even though you can get away with using one word, so like this ha, you could just say this right here, which in Japanese is nami, you can just say this wave. Because of the nature of Chinese, it's really not a good idea to just use one word. So you can attach 2 different kanji that mean the same thing to really make sure that people aren't getting you confused. As like, I'm talking about waves here. So banni no hato, so the endless waves. The endless waves. Kamu nagara. So divinely endless waves ni. There's that prepositional ni. Or so in this instance, I would say to or on. The innumerably immeasurable waves, iza mukawam. Okay, iza, which again, if you see the previous video, you know iza comes from the verb izanau, which means to invite. And you say iza when you're trying to get somebody to do something. It kind of means something like let's go, or let's do something like that, or well then, in that case, so then. You know, it's something that you say like let's go, and you see it in samurai a lot of times, like samurai movies and games and stuff. Samurai will say, Iza jinjou ni shobu, which means, well then, let's have a fair duel. Let's fight fairly. Come at me, bro, is basically what it's saying. However, this is not a come at me, bro. It's basically an invitation. It comes from, again, izanao, which means to invite. So I'm inviting you, Iza mukawam. Mukawam comes from mukau, which means to face a thing or to move towards a thing, to go out to meet a thing. And we go from mukau, which is the ending form, to mukawa, which is the incomplete form, the not yet done form, the not yet form. And then we add this okay, which comes from mu. Okay, mu goes from mu to And when you do this, when you have the not complete form and then mu slash it denotes intention, volition. It's like, I am doing this on purpose. It is of my accord that I am doing this, okay? So iza mukawam is, well then, let us face, or I will face, the endless, innumerable waves as a god, in a divine manner, okay? In a godly manner. I think that's the end of it. Yes, okay. So let's recap TLDR, because this one, I think this one's going to be really long. So, O warera ga jibo Amaterasu o mikami. O our compassionate mother, Amaterasu, great god, heaven shining. The sun goddess. I, coming to this sacred tree, escaping from the floating world, the transient, horrible, catastrophic world, in regards to that, if there is to be war, I, Hasu no Hanagami, I, flower god of the lotus, omoto no futokoro ni, to your pocket, to your breast fold. I'm sorry. It's because she's a goddess. To your, in this area, okay, to your heart, back to you, return humbly, kairi tate matsurite, and face the innumerable, the endless waves in a godlike manner, okay? And then you get the special ability, okay? Yay! That means Hasu, that means lotus. Okay, unfortunately this one's going to be a little bit longer. I keep thinking these are going to be shorter, but I have so much that I want to say. So much that I want to break down. I want to make sure that you guys, if any of you guys are like learning Japanese, or if you're learning classical Japanese, heaven forbid, heaven help you, because you must be crazy. Don't think about what that means for me. But if you are struggling with this, I'm hoping that by breaking it down and explaining things as much as I physically possibly can, that it will help you guys understand it, and it will convey some of these things that if you don't speak Japanese, why this is so cool and how it works and how everybody is relating themselves to Amaterasu as she is the great goddess, right? I find it fascinating that in the game, Amaterasu is running around, right? Clearly this special, super powerful, magical wolf, and everybody just kind of treats her like a dog, right? She's like, oh, look, there's just a cute, adorable wolf that's kind of running around and sometimes getting into mischief. And yet, when you come to these gods, these celestial brush technique gods, they know who she is. And they don't treat her like she's some cute, adorable little puppy. They're like, oh my goodness, she is the head of the pantheon. She is to whom we owe our allegiance and we owe all of our powers, right? We are here to serve her. So that's just a fun little tidbit. So if you learned something from this video and you did enjoy it, please don't forget to give it a like. And if you like classical Japanese and all that stuff, and believe me, there is plenty more of these that we have to get through. I mean, I think we're on 4 and there's 13, potentially even more with some of like the upgraded versions of these. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and please share with all of your friends who do play Okami, who might want to be learning Japanese or might want to be learning classical Japanese, heaven forbid. But also, this is kind of in celebration and preparation for when the sequel comes out, and I am so hoping that the sequel has classical Japanese in it. If it doesn't, I'm going to be very upset. I'll still play it, but I'll be a little bummed out. Let's just say that. Okay, but this is long enough, so I'm going to end it here. If you've been watching all the way up to the end, I thank you sincerely. Ito kata jiki no koso habere kere. And hopefully we'll see you in the next one. In the meantime, go play some Okami. Goodbye.